Okay. I believe it's time to open the public meeting for the Littleton Conservation Commission on June 21st. And I guess right up front, we'd like to know about approving the minutes. Anybody in omissions or corrections to the minutes?
Can we stop for just a second and just say how appreciative we are of James and all his decades of service, and I wish I could be there with all of you now. It's been such a pleasure to work with you, and your history of everything will be missed. I am very confident that no one can ever fulfill your shoes, and we will be constantly asking you about some historic data and your thoughts, and it is with pleasure that I acknowledge your passion for all of your family, your farming, for the town of Littleton, and I think we're all blessed to say that it's been our pleasure.
Thank you for the kind words, Sarah. So anybody got any omissions or corrections on the minutes?
It looks great. I sent a couple small edits to Amy earlier. I just added a couple where it was regarding, I forget which property it was now, but it's in parentheses, summarized what we had been, what we discussed. Okay, added erosion control movement and
You said those recently, or?
yeah, early evening, probably 4-ish. Earlier.
I didn't see them, but I'll double
It was
check.
very, very minor.
Julie, you
Yeah.
have any comments on the minutes?
It's crazy.
Okay. If not, can I have a motion, please, to accept them as presented?
Sure. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from June 7th, 2020.
I second remotely.
Good.
Actually,
Val,
Sarah,
you want
I don't think you can.
Really?
Can I say-
Okay. I retract my second.
He's not like
I'll
on
second.
video. Thank you, Carl.
So we just have to say all in favor, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All in
Weird.
favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
And before you go any further, I think Don had something.
Sure.
Sorry, Jim, you're not getting off that easy.
Can you just,
So,
Can you make sure you use the mic?
first, we appreciate working with you and all your years of service. And I thought I'd better do you here than, stepping the toes of selectmen. It was nice. That interaction, that's rare, so it was a good interaction. So also Judy Pickett wanted to be here. And she has a new rescue dog. It's the first time she has it. She's afraid of leaving it alone.
Oh.
But she really wanted to be here. Be
Bring
with
it
you.
here.
Judy Pickett was town council. And what's even more interesting is that, here we're all volunteers, and Judy and I were volunteers, trustees and board of Mass Association Conservation Commissions for many years, was at Tufts, and Pam Reeser was the executive director before she became representative and senator. But it's amazing what gets accomplished by volunteer action. I mean, it's truly amazing. The rest of the country is sort of amazed by that. So anyway, I wanted to, thank you and give you a card. It's a simple card. Other people from the trust, such as Jim and Rick, will come in later, but it's a little bit fragmented. So I'll give you a card. And also just to add verbally that, I've been in communication with David Sanderson. He's interested in leaving some of his land open, which means probably selling development rights. So we'll bring in some Ray Valley trustees, and I'll talk to Amy. And all this is missed publicly at home, and that's too bad. So thank you much. Of course, you'll still have to get up 4 a.m. to milk the cows, but
But he can go to sleep by 7.
all right.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
Oh, we're there.
Do we want to read this recognition again here with Anna and Sarah?
yeah,
Yes.
and Brian.
Is Anna here?
Brian over here.
Anna's, I see her name, and Matt.
Thank you. I'm having a hard time.
Everybody,
I think that's
A lot of people in the waiting room. You want to hit them off? I can't. Oh, there they are. I was having a hard time finding them.
Oh, okay.
There we go. So for those of you who couldn't make it, the select board had arranged for an acknowledgement by Ronald Mariano, the Speaker of the House, and State Representative James Arciero, for everything that Jim has done, as well as a plaque to Jim for sincere appreciation for his dedicated community service to the Conservation Commission and the Agricultural Commission for over 43 years. Town of Littleton, June 2021.
Hard to believe it's been that long.
I kept going
Yeah.
back through the minutes, trying to find your name, and it was there, and I'd go back another 10 years, and it was still there, and I'd go back.
So it was funny, we had it, so I've been talking to Jamie, so we've been with Jamie and Eleanor and trying to figure out the amount of time, and so I had forgotten to delete the word approximately, so I'll delete it this time, but yeah, so Amy went through the records to determine it was in fact 43 years. That's something to be said for volunteering for that long.
And I couldn't verify how long you'd been chair, because after a certain point, the minute stopped saying who his chair was, so. Were you chair for 43 years? Or?
No.
It was at least 20 that I saw.
It was when we were down at the highway department in that interim when the building was being all changed over at the town hall. That's when that happened. So,
It's coming full circle because we're all getting moved or shuffled around all over again in terms of our rooms.
yes.
Right? Yeah, are we homeless?
I know, right?
Somewhat. All right, I'll read. So we read this at the select board as well. The commission, in addition to some of Jim's family, had some input into what I'm about to read. As we just discussed, Jim has served on the Conservation Commission for 43 years. He's a lifelong Littleton resident, graduated from Littleton High School in 1963. He was active in 4-H and livestock showing until took over Idlevale, the family farm, from his parents in 1980. Jim has served the community in many ways. We are grateful for his leadership and advocacy for many important accomplishments, such as the preservation of Nagog Hill Orchard, establishing the Agricultural Commission, preservation of Frost Whitcomb property, establishing the Oak Hill Cell Tower for revenue generation, creation of Oak Hill parking lot on Harvard Road, and bringing efficiency to meetings, in addition to many, many more countless contributions. Farmers are the original conservationists. Jim is led by example by keeping his own property as open space. He has been a voice of reason for working with the land to implement environmental solutions rather than re-engineering it. He has fostered and encouraged a working relationship between the Conservation Trust and Conservation Commission, as well as many town boards, to preserve Littleton's land. As a farmer and lifelong Littletonian, Jim is well respected by many of the local developers and is able to understand their point of view. This has made him an effective advocate for conservation and has streamlined hearings throughout the years. During meetings, Jim can be counted on to keep us on track. We've got to move along, and okay, folks, what's your pleasure will continue to echo in our heads after his departure. Jim can tell you the history of any property on our agenda, often because he once grew corn or hay there, or he knows somebody. He knows everybody. His knowledge and wisdom has been invaluable to the commission and to the town of Littleton. Jim has been a steadfast voice for conservation and for reason for 4 decades and will very much be missed. We plan to name a trail at Oak Hill in Jim's honor.
Oh,
There's a mock-up of the sign that Amy.
I saw that. Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Julie. That was beautiful.
So I guess we got some administrative discussion to take up. Request for a certificate of compliance, 628 Newtown, 204-771.
It turns out that is not ready, so we can table that.
Okay. Request for a certificate of compliance for Turkey Farm, lots 10, 23, 25, and 30. Is those, yeah, I need to read the numbers or?
No, but those are all ready to go. They all had sort of minor things and was finally able to get a site walk out there with Brian Goodrow and Chris Finneral. And these are ready to go. Some others aren't yet, but if the commission is so interested, we get these off the bottom of the list.
Anybody want to make a motion to approve certificate of compliances? These lots at Turkey Farm.
I'll make a motion that the board issue certificates of compliance for lots.
I'm impressed by our eyesight, so we can see that far.
I couldn't. It was all for show. For lot 10, DP file number 204-803, lot 23, DP file number 204-814, lot 25, DP file number 204-809, and lot 30, DP file number 204-804.
Second.
Somebody want to second that?
Second.
Julie did, yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's hard getting used to this in
I know,
person.
this is weird, right?
Well, don't get too used to it. And I'm missing one, so I will send we can still do electronic signatures, so.
Okay. Request for a certificate of compliance, 27 Fort Pond Hill, 204-882. Is that,
That is also not ready.
okay?
And I'm sorry, I did want to back up on 628 Newtown. The only reason it's not ready is because he's been mowing the septic field like a lawn instead of once a year. So everything else is set on that. And he is still interested in coming back about the driveway.
I said that's the property that has the driveway going across the street.
Right, exactly. But I told him
Oh,
this had nothing to do with that. So I'm gonna wait for the grass to grow again and try that again.
Okay. Enforcement order 16A, Deer Run resolution. What's the
10,
story on
23.
that one?
25, 30. Just catch up here. So yes, that is ready. That was Mr. Portanova. And he had hydroseeded it, put up erosion controls. I went out and said the erosion controls can come out, and the grass just came in really nicely, actually. So I think if you want to lift the enforcement order, you can do so.
Who wants to speak up?
I don't have.
We
the
need
name
lot
in front of
numbers.
me, so-
Make a motion to lift the enforcement order at 16A Deer Run Road.
Second.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hey, this is nice.
You wonder, you sure you want to leave?
Sure you're leaving?
Hey, make the last and easy for you.
Enforcement order 144 Goldsmith Street, EQ ratification.
This is not easy.
EO.
The, that is one where he put in for a shed permit, and the shed is actually just outside the buffer zone, give or take. However, he has done a lot of clearing. I'm not sure if you saw the pictures of it. I can pull them up if you want. And so I did issue him an enforcement order, and you just need a vote to ratify it.
He was, how'd that go?
Well, you know, it was interesting because the original lawn appeared to be right at the property line, and there's a stone wall a good 50 or 75 feet further back. All the lots next to him go deep. His does not. And that's the Steve Marsh on the rail house lots that are in there. Wellington Drive, Wellington Circle. So he actually cleared someone else's lot
Oh,
Whoops.
also.
And he was receptive to it though, or you talked to him?
I talked to him. He was receptive. I think I'm just gonna have to stay on top of him. no wetlands impact. It was just buffer zone, cutting down all the trees. So
That's an impact.
the order condition said, or the enforcement order said he needs to put in a restoration plan coming for the commission for the July, whatever the next meeting is.
We need to, this needs a vote, or are we still?
This is, yeah,
This is an
this is
old,
old paper. This paper we already voted on.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion that we ratify enforcement order at the mentioned property.
144 Goldsmith.
44 Goldsmith.
yeah, you don't want to confuse us now. Because
I can see it getting,
maybe after, a
Do
couple
we need a
meetings.
second on that last?
Am I allowed to second if I also provided the address on the original
Absolutely.
motion? Okay, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
right,
Discussion of Hager Homestead Conservation Restriction?
That was on there just in case, basically the attorneys came to agreement and it just hasn't happened yet, so that's tabled.
It looks like it's 7:47. No, we have a 7:45 we need to open.
Well, actually, what I would suggest is do the next one, the meeting schedule, so that if the public hearing gets continued, we know to when and where.
Okay. Fair enough.
So your choices are, I believe, and Judy can jump in if I'm saying anything wrong here. You can continue with meetings going forwards almost any way you want to. You can be 100% live, 100% virtual, or hybrid. If you want to be live, we'd have to switch from Mondays. So we could either go down to the water department on Mondays, which is not really what I would call wired for anything hybrid, or we could come here on Tuesdays. We can't come here on Mondays because they do training and they're just outside right now. Or we can do alternate Tuesdays with the finance department in room 103 in town hall. So live, virtual, hybrid, Monday or Tuesday.
I like
Can I
hybrid.
ask a question? So if I'm hybrid, how come I can't vote tonight?
You can vote if we can see you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see her.
so what is hybrid?
Hybrid is this.
Like Sarah's.
Oh, so you.
People here, people on the,
Meeting and other people that can't make it.
Mhm.
you have to have a live quorum.
No, the governor extended the public meetings, so I say we go with that as long as we possibly can virtually.
I saw something in
my
the
2
paper
cents.
to the December 21st. It was in the law.
I've seen April.
April 1st,
I think we should do that as long as we possibly can. When that stops, that stops.
And also, at some point, we will have like a permanent place in the library or something after all that happens. So rather than switch twice, we could certainly wait until the fall and decide again. Chase had said he could do Tuesdays also, but he also might wait until he's officially in here also.
Mhm.
So keep the Mondays virtual.
Yeah.
Sounds
It's
good.
what we've known for a year now, so.
It's all we know.
No, I would definitely hate to lose even 2022. I feel like the virtual piece is helpful, so that the public can attend and it just makes it more accessible,
Yeah.
I think, for people.
Yeah, I agree. I've enjoyed that we've had more feedback and interaction from the public. I think the piece that some of us struggle with is some of the plans are difficult to read. We need to try and think of how to scale them proportionately a little bit more as well. And definitely they need to be color coded. It's hard to read some of these on some of these monitors.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think we'll have to figure out how that's going to work. If the applicant has their plans spread out here, we would also need to have them up on the screen if we're
Well, you're talking hybrid, right?
If we're hybrid. If we're Zoom, everything's up on the screen anyway, so.
Is that possible, Judy? That's something you guys can do? I know you guys can do a lot. I just figured while we're making plans, we should check in and
It's
and
not-
ask.
Back when you were in 307, if you had a plan on the table, I mean, we would just try to find one camera that could sneak in between the two people that were huddling over it.
Yeah.
It would be the same thing here. So it's basically taking what we would normally do if you were Zoom only and what we would do if you were in the room and doing both at the same time. So we grew, most of us have.
So can I clarify that though? So are you then asking for the applicant to be in the room, even though we're all going to be remote potentially?
No, they were talking about if we were hybrid.
Oh, okay.
If we were hybrid,
Right.
what would happen? And basically,
If
we
have
do
to
two jobs at the same time.
So in the very short term, we will certainly remain 100% Zoom.
I think it would be interesting, James, I'm not sure, do we have to vote on this or is it just kind of comfort level for everyone?
I just kind of want to take the temperature of the commission because this is all just sort of rolling along here, but it seems like consensus is keep doing Zoom.
Can I ask a question? If you go hybrid, you'd still have people in person, but for anybody that's traveling or has to jobs away from town here, would give them the option to be included in the meetings.
Well, I think I'd like to put a voice out for Amy though, is that she would then still have to schlep around the roller cart of all the forms that she needs to have access. So if we're moving her over to a totally different building, she has to physically move those files versus.
I'm not doing, if it doesn't fit in here, it's not going. But if we end up in the library in the fall or whatever, will that be set up like you said the police department was with the mics from the top?
No,
Oh,
I believe they have microphones like this.
yeah.
I think the only room that has ceiling mics primarily is the police station. The room 103, the select board, where you guys just were, there's the mics on the tables, but there's also ceiling mics in the audience. So we were talking about ceiling mics because if you're moving papers around on the table, every time you guys shuffle a paper by, the microphone picks it up. So that might come into play as to what room you want to use. But
That's a good point.
I think you're
That sounds
Looking
like a
at fall.
discussion for, 4 or 5 months from now.
All right, so the next meeting will be July 12th on Zoom, Monday, July 12th on Zoom.
good.
We are good. Thank you
Sounds
very
good.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're good for right now.
Okay, other administrative updates, are we all clear on that now and go?
I think we're actually all clear and can jump into the first.
7:45, public hearing notice of intent, 1 Chipmunk Lane, U48210, Mass DEP file number 204-9XX, construction of a foyer addition to the front of the house. You want to speak to us?
Do. Is there a particular location on the floor I should be standing?
Just near the microphone.
In front of the microphone, that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know how fancy we need to get. This is a relatively straightforward and small presentation here, but I do have it electronically on flash drive if you wanted to try to display it at all.
I'm pulling it up now.
Pulling it up.
We need to.
There you go.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Dale Swanson and I work for JF Bassnet Company. And I'm here representing Michael and Suzanne Livingston of 1 Chipmunk Lane. And we are working together to develop a small addition to the front of their home. I do have an extra mic. I do have probably more paperwork than I need. But I don't do this very often. So if everybody wanted a copy, they can peruse the entirety of the application, site plan, notes.
Thanks, sir.
I'm gonna flip through the paperwork well, primarily focus on the site plan itself. That's the best story, high level. Like I said, this is One Chipmunk Lane, and you can see in the center of the plan, the entry foyer on a single family residence. And it's a no obstruction of anything existing other than a front entry landing and step. So it's kind of an oddly configured way to the house, so that the homeowners are looking to improve their entry into the house. It's a roughly 25 by 18 foot addition. As you can see in the center there. And the property hasn't been flagged, but pretty clearly shown what the buffer is with Forge Pond on the western town line to the rear of the property. This plan was a culmination of my work through some CAD assisted, computer assisted drafting, GIS located, and then some field measurements to make the plan as accurate as possible to existing conditions. So many of the existing contours and the buffers have been scaled out. Existing structure, decks, porches, the home. In addition, to the front of the property clearly located, and as you can see by that 100-foot buffer line, we're clearly right on the limits of the wetland protection area. One thing of note about the significance of this particular addition is that it's not as impactful as some other additions projects from a site work construction standpoint, in that the foundation itself, there's no crawl space, there's no full basement, it's just a stem wall type foundation. So basically that's one concrete wall at frost protection depth that goes along the front elevation of the addition. So the excavation itself is fairly minimal. There'll be a small excavator on site on the digging. Some of the topsoil in the area will be removed and placed with the clean pervious space underneath the addition. So the addition itself is actually above and over grade, and it's open air underneath. There will be a temporary stockpile of materials on the opposite side of the room of the excavator, shown in the circled area off to the right. And to protect the area, the house itself actually works as I wouldn't say natural, but existing barrier to the water. So very well contained to the front of the house, but to help out silt fencing to the left and right of the home, and an existing wood fence along the right side of the house all the way down to the water will all serve as good natural or existing barriers to contain any potential washout. As you flip through the pictures to get yourself familiar with the home itself, it's all pretty. Maybe a desk would have been good.
Our old room had a table.
Yeah, table.
You would have been able to.
Yeah, spread it all out. But that's it. One Chipmunk Lane. That's the work area. Right centralized in the middle of the house. There's a flat area to the left and right. The addition area, the entry level is approximately 20 feet higher than the pond itself. So there is some contour leading up, but it's also tiered and steps. Steps was a couple the flat areas to the left and right of the house that are good for silt fence installation. But I got clear pictures of all the elevations of the house, left and right. You can see how it's stepped and tiered sideways. But minimal impact to existing grading. Nothing other than let's get this improvement of structure to their entry to their home. There'll be a little bit of tie-in to the new location of the front entry to the door. So some light landscaping, but I included the general construction drawings to give you a sense of what the size of the build is and its impact to the area. And there's, if you flip through the next couple pages, Amy. It's the rear, it's just getting you familiar with the existing topography. I included the drawings just to give you a sense of the scope of the project and what a stem wall foundation is and how, its advantages are, minimally impacting the area. There's a cost benefit to go with that, minimal effort in order to get the structure above it. And the very last picture is just another example of what a stem wall foundation is from a previous build of ours. From the very last picture. This is very similar to the, zoom out a little bit, that one, stem wall foundation there, and that's similar, except for in this case, for this addition, a little bit more space underneath the addition itself. And that, generally speaking, that is the extent of it, its location, and the intent of the modification here.
And unfortunately, DEP has not issued a file number yet. So you can't close, but you might be able to get closer.
You got any questions?
Yeah, sure. This might benefit, I guess, if you don't have the number yet, but I have a couple quick questions.
Absolutely.
I think looking at the plan, so the stem wall, actually in that photo right there,
Sure.
it's just on the front, it doesn't go on all three sides.
That's correct.
So as far as excavation goes, you're talking 4 feet by the 6 inches
Yeah,
wide there.
it's a very narrow trench, other than the only other, digging that we do would be under the entirety of the addition. So about 450 square feet, so we'll take any organic base, organic soil, topsoil that is directly located underneath that, under that addition, and then replace that with a processed clean pervious base, so that just deters water retention and vegetation growth underneath the actual
Gotcha.
building itself.
What's the plan for the excavated soils?
So the all excavated soils will be probably more likely not temporarily stockpiled in the location, and then hauled off-site and disposed of in improved locations, or repurposed hopefully in another construction site.
Perfect. All right, so as far as the stockpile goes, the one thing that I noticed, and it's super minor, but if you
Yeah.
have to come back in anyway, we don't allow stockpiling inside the 100-foot buffer. So
Sure.
It shows it going inside the, not by a lot.
Yep.
But on top of that, and it has the same hash mark, but you should call out erosion controls around the stockpile
Okay.
as an added measure.
Yep. I like that provision, and that's certainly something we'll take into account with moving things forward. Yep.
Great.
And there may be, depending on the sequence of events and amount of impact, there may be zero stockpile, but if there is a temporary stockpile, we'll make sure to follow an order of condition to contain that area for any length of time.
So here remotely on page 23, which is up that I can see, it's a little hard to see some of the existing distances to the wetlands, the edge. Can you just read out what some of those numbers are for me, please?
Certainly. Yep. I think I did fairly well with scaling off, and hitting those offsets. So we have centrally the shortest distance as the crow flies from the impacted areas directly to the water, 88.5 feet, which is to the interior bump of the addition to the water's edge. That's scaled out at 88.5 feet. To the left elevation, the closest erosion control barrier to the left side is about 95.5 feet, and to the right side of the house, off the right corner, which serves as a great abutting surface for that right side erosion control barrier, we're at about 94 feet. So pretty linear across the front face of the house relative to its position to the water. So all close and onto that 100 foot, and we don't want to go down the hill.
Out of curiosity, have you run this by the building inspector yet?
I met with the inspector briefly, and I had a previous version of this site plan, and generally it was well taken, and his biggest concern that he pointed out right off the bat was that big blue blotch to the back of it. So that was one of the first things we talked about, was to make sure that there were appropriate measures in place for protecting the resource. But from a construction standpoint, it's relatively straightforward. It's a porch, and that stem wall is kind of a relatively newer technique to supplant pier footing type of foundations that we've used in the past, that more or less been deemed a difficult type of structure to calculate their strength relative to lateral and structural forces that the addition has to withstand. So the stem wall foundation has worked well for us.
So they set the rear part of the porch on the foundation of the existing house, so tie it in there, and then you
Right. Yep.
have the stem wall out in front there.
Yep. Exactly right.
Anybody else got any questions?
You guys covered it.
Is there time to get some sort of a consensus of, we can't vote, I don't think we can vote on this right now.
Yeah, because there's no DEP file number yet, but
And I think the sliver of the stockpile just needs to be bumped to the southeast a little bit. Or
Okay,
south, just get it out of the line.
Yep. Understood.
So I imagine if you can just give me that adjusted plan, probably doesn't need to come back unless there's a DEP comment.
You're right.
Yep.
it's DPS.
Fair enough. Sounds favorable. I appreciate your time this evening here, and certainly I'll make that modification. Is that something that I'll produce and get back to you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So the next meeting is the 12th. So I would just need it by the Tuesday before that,
Yep.
so I can circulate it. And hopefully DEP will
So
have
there's a number.
issued a
By
number
then.
by then.
And this is probably non-typical for with just the processes currently, probably why there hasn't been a number issued yet.
DEP is very slow
jammed
these
up,
days
yeah.
about issuing their numbers, so.
Yeah, understood.
And you can certainly, if you haven't heard from them in a week, give them a call.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, does this plan need to be colored to satisfy Sarah?
I can see it pretty well. So like I can
Okay.
see the yellow and the blue. So I think it's good.
Okay.
Okay,
So it's just moving the stockpile, just showing, moving the stockpile out of the buffer zone and.
Excellent.
And a number.
What's that?
I said and the number.
And the number, yes.
That's
We
the-
can't help you with that, unfortunately.
Number and relocation of stockpile outside, which there's plenty of room off in that area to
Yeah.
accomplish that. Very small pile as well.
Yeah, right, doesn't sound
It's
seriously.
really minimal. Yep.
Okay.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
thank you.
Continued public hearing, notice of intent, 5 Cottage Way, U 26-9-0, Mass DEP file number 204-933, construction of a new septic system.
You guys, where should I set this up? You guys have a preferred,
I think you need to be near the mic.
Yeah, as long as you're near a microphone so they can hear you.
Been a while since I set these to work.
I know, do you? You have the manual?
Curves everywhere. This is great.
Want to maybe do it off a little bit to the side, so people
Yeah,
can
maybe,
see it.
yeah, I
and-
was gonna say someplace
hopefully everybody gets to use it.
And these microphones are totally mobile, so you can move.
I'm missing the other.
You're missing one.
Yeah. It's
Oh,
always
man.
on there.
Well, say, if Jim doesn't mind, you can put it on top of the Oak Hill sign. But
Let's give this a-
I have one just like that, that I'm not using it.
Yeah.
I couldn't get them even.
Yeah. We didn't invest in the finest of easels. All right. Before I get started, I will echo the sentiments of the Conservation Commission in thanking Jim for his years of dedicated service. Did I hear 42 years?
3.
3. That's a long go of it. Thank you very much, sincerely. So, on behalf of the applicant and for the public record, my name is David Cowell. I'm a senior wetland scientist with Hancock Associates. This is a continued public hearing in permitting a wastewater septic system at 5 Cottage Way. Since the previous hearing, we were asked to really vet and do an alternatives analysis on the location of our system and any alternative systems that may be available to us that are lower impact designs than the septic system as we had planned. And I think the primary concern is proximity to the stream in terms of requesting a waiver on the 50-foot no disturb zone. So I'll walk us briefly through our alternatives analysis of locations. The first location we looked at is, I mean, the obvious preferred location would be on the side of the house. So just to orient people on the plan here, this hybrid is, I don't know how to.
I know. I
Point to a
just
screen or
realized.
point to a plan. But by orientation on this plan, Fort Pond, the actual water line is at the far, it's not north, but it's the north, the way this is oriented. You have the existing house and existing garage. There is a gray water system that's discharging untreated, the sinks and the showers, which is about 25 feet away from the shoreline. There is an existing online cesspool and outhouse that is located it's about 60 feet away. But this area here, the speckled coloration, so the green color is 50-foot no disturb zone. This is 50 feet away from the pond. This is 50 feet away from the intermittent stream that runs on the property. And this is outside of the 50, but still inside the 100 foot. This was our preferred location. We exhaustively did test pitting in this area to see if it would work. And it frankly just doesn't. It's all shallow ledge. There's no opportunity to site a septic system or anything with infiltration in this area, which is what really drives us to where we are. The only alternative we have is to cross the stream with our system and put it on the opposite side of this intermittent stream. And this is, we'll call it the preferred alternative, is where we have our leach field sited and where we have our development. So we've invalidated that there's any opportunity for infiltration in this. So if you go to the opposite side, we looked at shifting the system further away from the 50-foot no build zone towards Shagbark Drive and further away from the property. The prohibition here is that you have a steep and gradient embankment that anybody who attended the site walk who's seen this on site, the contour lines, although they're overlaid with all of this fabric, are, it rises in elevation from 105 to 125. So that's 20 feet in elevation over a very short span before you get to Shagbark. This is also all ledge. It's shallow rock outcrop. There's no opportunity to infiltrate in that area. So there is no opportunity to push our system further away from where we have it located based on steepness of grade, but most importantly, the shallow ledge. There's again, no opportunity to do that. We were asked by the commission and some other members of the public if we would entertain the opportunity of crossing Shagbark Drive and if there was any opportunity further beyond. First of all, you would have to actually take the force line and push it over Shagbark Drive, which is considerably more land alteration, and the grading it would entail, the tree clearing it would entail to get to the opposite side of Shagbark. And then on the very opposite side of Shagbark, you run into another PBW complex that is entirely wet. And there's no opportunity to go further beyond Shagbark Drive without actually filling in or again, crossing through that wetland to get further. So that was our review of locations. Again, we maintain that this is the only viable location that we have available to us to do a infiltration system. So then we went back to reviewing low impact alternatives. We did review at your request, we looked at composting toilet and we did look at a tight tank. Now the composting toilet, although it may be permissible, doesn't really have an improvement to water quality over the existing condition in the context that it would only treat human waste. It wouldn't treat the gray water that again remains discharging 25 feet away from the shore's edge. So all of your detergents, every time you do a load of laundry, every time you take a shower, every time you wash your dishes, bleach, soaps, you name it, your toothpaste is all discharging 25 feet away. So it's not really a practical alternative. And there is a mandate too that I think we put in our alternatives analysis that I think 50% of the wastewater still needs to be treated. So it's not a viable option. We look at tight tanks. And the issue with tight tanks is that pursuant to Title V is that if you have a Title V compliant system available to you, the Board of Health, we did talk to Jim Gareffi, they will not recommend that system if the Title V alternative is available. And it's actually written right in the Title V regulations. And we cited the Title V regulations with our alternatives analysis. So again, because we have a Title V system available to us, as we've demonstrated, it's not an option. The Board of Health will not approve that. We can't have that. So that leaves us again with the conventional septic system that we have. Now in this circumstance, there was expressed concern by members of the general public that, it's still in proximity to the intermittent stream. What if the system ever leaks? Will there be leachate that goes to the intermittent stream that leads directly into Fort Pond? Water quality is the primary concern here. And the Title V regulations are set specifically to protect water quality. That they have a minimum 50-foot setback, which we meet. This is a Title V compliant system. We have the infiltration rates beneath the system to meet that. If, I can look at the commission and say with a straight face that this is the only practical alternative we have that will improve water quality over the existing additions that they have out there now. And if that, it's sort of like beating a dead horse at this point. I mean, if you guys were of the opinion to go to a stormwater expert for peer review, I'm confident that this will stand the test of stormwater peer review. I mean, wastewater peer review. So that's what we're coupled with. So now what we did was, again, looking at opportunity to avoid, minimize, and mitigate, is we found more opportunity to reduce our impact. Now we've incorporated a retaining wall. If you guys recall from the past plan, this blue hatching that's detailed on our plan now is the limit of alteration within the 50-foot no disturb zone. Previously, this was tapered grading all the way down to nearly the wetland edge in order to meet the mounting of the system and the tapered grading that was required. By putting a retaining wall, which is actually a considerable added expense to the applicant, it reduces the necessary tapered grading going away from it, and we've reduced our impact in the 50-foot no-build zone by 2,800 square feet in our plan as we have it now. And that's what we have before the commission, and that's what we'd like to talk about.
What kind of a wall are you proposing?
Jacob Lemieux is on the line. Jacob, do you have an answer for that? Is this a prefab?
Yes, for the record, Jacob Lemieux with Hancock Associates. We're proposing a big block retaining wall, so it'll be similar to a ready rock wall, just large concrete blocks, gravity wall.
How tall of a wall?
Jacob, is it less than 4 feet? Do we need structural engineer on this, or is it something we can spec?
No, we do need a structural review, but it's likely that we'll go to a prefab company like Ready Rock that's an all-in-one service where they have they have structural engineers in-house so they can design using their own units.
So the question was, how tall is the wall? That just tells me it's more than 4 feet.
So the wall is a 7.5 foot max. Right at this midpoint here. I don't know how well you can see this. So you see this top of wall 116, bottom of wall 108.5. That's the peak height difference. So it goes from 7.5 foot and then peters down on this side, and the grade rises to meet the top of it on the south side.
Does that change your planting plan in that 50?
It does. We've reduced the planting plan based on surface area. So Jacob, you said this was, our alteration, I can't talk tonight. Altered area is now, this is 20% of what it once was. So we reduced the mitigation native plantings that we had specified to 20% of what was previously specified.
Yep.
Well, we also
That's correct.
changed- Yeah, but I forget what our tree count was that we were, trees that were
That's gonna be my
taken
next question.
have reduced that now down to less than 10 trees, and I think it was a magnitude of upper 20s, lower 30s before. So, but now our tree clearing would be, say, 10 or less.
Will there be a liner on the inside of the wall to keep any leachate from going through towards the brook?
Jacob,
No,
did you have-
yeah, I heard the question. Title V has setback requirements for needing an impervious barrier on the rear of the retaining wall. As long as you're past 15 feet, you're not safe from leaching breakout into the rear of the wall.
Does that answer your question?
So wait, so he said because, I think what I heard him say was because the retaining wall would be farther than 15 feet from the wetland, the liner's not required,
That's what Jacob,
Because
can you?
which doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
because the retaining wall is 15 feet past the edge of the system, it's not required. Not the wetlands, the system
Oh, the
itself.
system, that makes a lot more sense. Say if it's
Yeah.
gonna break through, if it's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes a lot more sense.
yep, okay, thank you. And Dave, I had one more point of clarification. So you used the word recommend and approve for the tight tank. So I just was seeking some clarification because you had said that the health department wouldn't recommend a tight tank, and then you said they wouldn't. So
Is
you
the board,
said
the Board
both
of Health,
things.
now, Amy, did you have conversation with
which
Jim
one is it?
Gareffi? So pursuant to the conversation with Jim Gareffi, is Jim Gareffi makes recommendations to the Board of Health, but he's
Mhm.
not the Board of Health. So he
Okay.
would not recommend to the Board of Health doing that, based on this regulatory citation. I imagine the Board of Health would follow suit. I can't imagine that the Board of Health would, or even that the Board of Health would have the opportunity to do that in non-compliance with Title V.
Okay, yeah, you used two different words with the Board of Health, so I
Yep.
just wanted to clarify what.
It was, yeah.
What that meant.
He, I believe,
It's-
because I'm trying to cite him without,
Yep.
They're
you know,
separate entities,
quote,
right?
but that was
Yeah.
his discussion with him. is that
No, that's
he
fine.
wouldn't
I just wanted to
recommend.
make sure I understand. I mean, this is an absolutely huge impact to the resource area. And we just need to make sure that all options have been exhausted. This is an incredibly significant impact.
We believe that they have, and we're open ears if there is an alternative that exists, but we don't believe there is.
Anybody else got any questions?
How far away is the front face of that wall to the resource area now?
Jacob, what's the shortest distance of we still have the encroachment into the 50, but what's the shortest distance from the wetland to the face of the wall?
I think it's about 40 feet. I don't have an exact measurement, but it's now about 40 feet, whereas right off the edge of the wetlands. Actually, it's going to be 35 feet from the wetlands edge because we're 15 foot off the side of the system there. So, 35, 36 feet from the edge of the wetlands.
I feel much better about that with a retaining. That was one of my biggest hangups on this whole thing.
I think it really does minimize the impact to the maximum extent that we can.
And it also maintains the wildlife corridor through there.
Is this supposed to be a year-round house or just a summer house or occasional?
It's just a summer house.
Can you describe how the force main, does it go under the wall now? Does it go through the wall?
Goes
goes
around.
It goes around it, okay.
The extent of the wall is, I don't know what the point is. But
At the end of that
the main line wall is
area is where the wall ends.
Okay, no.
I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but this right here is the end of the wall. So we're coming around to the left of the wall and then going up through the mound here.
Does that change your wetland crossing or the stream crossing?
The stream
No,
crossing remains the same. Yep. The stream crossing, it's still at the point of shortest distance of crossing. As we already did in one revision prior, we were lucky enough to get site access from the neighbor's crossing, which negates the necessity for a temporary access crossing. But they're still gonna need to trench this. The force main as it crosses is secondarily, is it concrete casing, Jacob, that is secondary casing as it goes through the wetland?
That's a PVC force main with a concrete lining around it to 10 foot either way on beyond the edge of the wetlands.
How deep is it?
Chairman, if I can interject at some point, you do have a hand raised in the virtual.
Okay. Julie did have a question of what the depth of the crossing, what the lower elevation on the trench would be?
So the minimum depth of cover is 4 foot right below where that wetlands crossing is. So we'll be a minimum of 4 foot below the surface, and the rest of the force main will be deeper all the way along, except for when you get to the mound here, it'll be a little closer to the surface.
And then minimum depth of cover is a standard?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go shallower than a couple of feet. Right when you get up to the rear of the D box, you're going to be about 9 inches down. So I think that we've got a satisfactory amount of cover here easily.
Of course, this is still subject to Jim Greffy's review and approval.
Right.
So what can you plant over, I'm just thinking about that 9 inches and it's gonna be on a slope. How do you ensure there's not erosion?
There's a seed mix that we're gonna apply. The seed mix in particular serves 2 purposes. One, it's composed of native species that serves wildlife habitat benefits, but it also is an erosion control mix that should provide, I imagine it would be a standard in the order of conditions that no less than, say, 80% uniform vegetative cover before it's considered stabilized to prevent erosion.
You have to monitor
the seed
it,
mixes are on here. I believe I specified a 1-1 blend of New England conservation restoration mix. You have the seed mix specs, Jake?
Yeah, if you look on screen, if you look where we have the restoration area notes, we have our spec for the restoration area. But then if you go over to the general notes of the side here. Sorry.
Oh, there's, yeah, 3-to-1 ratio blend of the New England erosion control mix restoration mix for dry sites, and that's the 3 ratio. The 1 would be the New England conservation wildlife seed. I usually blend the 2. The wildlife conservation seed mix actually has good native species for wildlife benefit, but it's slow to germinate. It doesn't have the same vegetative ground cover that you need for stabilization to prevent erosion. That's why we put the erosion control dry mix in with it. And the combination of the 2, I find, serves you'll get the stabilization with some that habitat benefit.
Yeah, I thought it was nine inches on a slope. I mean, 9 inches is fine, flat, but on a slope, if it's gonna be preferential erosion at that point.
So just if the 9 inches is only going to be over the D box area, and it's going to be a lot more level over the D box and the system than it is coming down the slopes on the side. So, where the where the steepest slopes are, you're not gonna have your pipe, your small 1.5 inch force main is gonna be down more than 2 feet, and you'll have, nothing will be there to stop any establishment of vegetation.
Actually, I have another question too. Sorry, for deep tanks and D-boxes, often you can see the location of someone's septic tank or D-box in their backyard because the grass gets hot, the vegetation doesn't grow. So do you have provisions for, like, is the 9 inches adequate for that, or?
Oh, for the.
Does it get dry? It gets hot and dry in the summer.
Standard,
Everything dies.
Yeah, right. Well, I can't mandate the applicant to irrigate it, but it's, the seed mix is designed for xeric soil type soils that can tolerate drought. It's mostly composed of, they make a dry mix and a wet mix, and the dry mix is for xeric soil types that are hardier species that will persist even during low moisture, full sun.
And hot tank underneath it.
Yeah.
Like that seems to be the difference. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
You still have a hand raised. John Bergeron, do you still have a question?
It's John Burge. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hey, just a couple of thoughts. I just like to point out that, oh, by the way, John Bergeron, 227 Newtown Road. Just the kind of the presumption here is that, you need to outfit the existing structure with, some level of septic. And I think that, one of the things that needs to point out is I'm still not convinced that the right answer isn't to go address the other 6 acres of land. I mean, I think if you go back, and I apologize because I can't remember which drawing it was trying to follow along. If you look, there's some 13, cottages, so to speak, that are right along the water's edge. And, this would be incredibly precedent setting if you were to, add 13 septic systems, tight tanks, whatever, at that level. I mean, I think if you look at the way the lots are shaped, certainly there's, the underlying design suggests that a full season house would be installed, further away. I mean, I just think we've got an apple and an orange here. We're trying to make an apple into an orange, to try and make this, effectively, kind of full round. So I wanted to make sure of that. The other thing I wanted to point out is this still does require the 50-foot, buffer zone waiver, which, again, I think is a dangerous precedent to set. I mean, I think that, we put that in place as a town for good reason. And I think that we need to reconsider that. I do appreciate the efforts that were made. I think that, the efforts with the retaining wall, less vegetation, I do appreciate it, but just to be blunt, I still think it still falls short. And, as a resident of Fort Pond and somebody who's, on the lake, regularly, my genuine concern is, so what happens not only when this installation, if it were to be approved, failure, additional events, the construction process, and then, ultimately 13 other lots. And if somebody could, I apologize because I don't recognize who's driving. If you could show the picture of the, the kind of the full frontal of the pond itself, I think it would give good indication of, the potential from this particular application of the precedent setting. So if you just kind of look at the square dots, thank you, by the way, for whomever was able to do that. I apologize. I'm not that good at this. If you look at all of the cottages along the way, and I think if you scroll down to the bottom of the screen, you're going to find, that's 1, 2, 3, I counted them. I counted 13. But if you look at these, I mean, and you just scroll up, it looks like the lots widen at the top, which seems to me the logical, place to be putting a house. Again, I just want to reiterate my opinion that I think we're trying to turn an apple into an orange here. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
I can respond to that if you hold Oliver up where it is now. So he's asking if we look at the other 6 acres, these are very elongated lots. This is 5 Cottage Way. This is the house Cottage Way, this is where we're proposing to put the system. This is the wetland complex that exists on the
I
opposite.
apologize, but we can't see what you're pointing to on screen.
Oh, I'm pointing to a giant wetland complex that is, throughout here. There's no way to do a line further out here. And any request for us to construct a house elsewhere on the property is overkill. That's not, that's not in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act or local bylaw. That's an incredulous comment asking us to construct a new single-family house elsewhere on the lot. When this
No,
guy
I
has
don't think it is. With all due respect, is that I think you bought an apple, you're trying to make it an orange, and it doesn't fit here. So do something else.
Oh, I think it's
I mean,
incredulous. It has nothing to do with the Wetlands Protection. It's not a practical alternative.
Why?
To build a new house on the lot and just tear down the cottage that he has now if he wants to get a septic system?
Sure. Rather than impact the environment and trash the one of the perfectly good lakes in Littleton.
If I may, this establishment would see a great improvement in the groundwater quality if all of these lots went to Title V septic systems. That's why Title V was put in place.
Yeah, probably many of them have cesspools if they're old.
Well, then
Yes.
we should do the homework and figure that out.
You should.
But also, I would just mention that the commission's job is to address each applicant as they come in, not to address all future applicants. It's to focus on one applicant at a time.
Chairman, you have another hand raised.
Are there any other questions from the audience?
McDonald,
Chairman, you have Ken McDonald with his hand raised. I'm not sure what, I think that's very garbled on my end.
Yeah, there's some funny sound issues.
Sounds like the chipmunks.
We have one more person with hand raised, McDonald.
But that's
Can
his
I have
audio.
just Ken McDonald want to speak?
Hear me better now?
Yes, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in because I actually live in this development. It's called Kimball Shore. There are 15 homes. And when it was first subdivided back in the 70s, each lot had a buildable section away from the pond because, as you folks have found out, that the pond along the shoreline is all ledge. I mean, it's just, almost impossible to build anything there. So there are some seasonal cottages that have been there since 1920. Question around cesspools, out of the 15, there are 3 in operation today. So it's not like all of them have cesspools. But this lot, if you look beyond the wetland shown on the GIS map to the right, that wide area there actually leads down to Fort Pond Road. And out of the 15, there's more than half of the lots have full-time homes on Fort Pond Road or with access to Fort Pond Road. And they have a seasonal summer cottage on the pond. And that's kind of how the neighborhood was designed. So it wouldn't be out of the question because a number of the other residents, actually every single resident who has a full-time home in Kimball Shore, it's not on the pond. They've utilized the way these lots were designed to build, because you can see how some of the lots get wider away from the pond, and that was the intent. So I just wanted to clarify that. I also wanted to just comment that, the alternative that's being presented here still violates the Littleton Wetland bylaw and violates the 50-foot no disturb area. The concrete wall that's being proposed, if you look at the plan specification, it said it would be a minimum of 15 feet from the septic system. So it would actually encroach potentially farther into the 50-foot NDA beyond the 15 feet. And it's all over 100 feet in length inside the 50-foot NDA. So it's a substantial, I think it was mentioned by Hancock Engineering that the height is 7.5 feet tall. It's a big wall. And it's as I think Julie Rupp had mentioned, this is absolutely a huge impact to the resource area. And the proposed alternative still requires digging up the stream to put in the force main. Unlike the comment that this is the proposal here with the retaining wall is the only alternative, it's just not. And I don't think the folks at Hancock have really done a thorough job of providing alternatives analysis. Another example is around the compost toilet, saying that, hey, it wouldn't help for the gray water, but there was no evaluation of what could be done to improve the gray water system. And that actually might be a good alternative to putting in a Title V system that is impacting the 50-foot NDA. I also just have one question. During a prior hearing, it was mentioned that the Board of Health has not yet provided a Title V permit for this project. And if that's the case, I guess should the commission be concerned about that? Is this such a risky endeavor or an unlikely thing to be improved that the Board of Health would not just provide a Title V permit, which usually is the process before it comes to Conscom?
Want me to answer that?
Yeah.
That's what the pre-filing consult is. That's why we went to Mr. Greffy to find out what is approvable and what's not. If Jim Greffy said that a tight tank would be approvable, we would acquiesce and go with that alternative. But Jim Greffy said no. We have a Title V compliant system that in our pre-filing consult that Jim Greffy said is approvable.
Gray water systems are also regulated under Title V, so there are some provisions for design, but they are regulated under the same provisions, and we would still need the force main to install a compliant gray water system.
Yeah. And I guess in closing remarks, I do recognize that authorization with the 50-foot no disturb is, as Julie implied, a significant impact. But it's the commission's purview to look at the interest for wetland protection under the Wetlands Protection Act and the wetland bylaw for wildlife habitat, fisheries, stormwater, storm damage prevention, fisheries habitat, wastewater, and water quality. And we can say without the quibble that the improvement to water quality that we have in front of you outweighs the net reduction of any impact that it would have by clearing 10 trees and putting the system in. That's our opinion.
The board members got any comments? What you thinking?
I guess it does make sense to, some of the things that I'm thinking about are the house exists and the cesspool exists. It would be different if the house didn't exist and we were going to put a system in. I mean, I agree the cesspool is not an acceptable thing to have here, and the water quality is being impacted by the existing system. The house today would never be approved under our current regulations. That being said, I would, 100 feet in length and 7-foot high retaining wall is still something that concerns me as far as like wildlife movement, stormwater, so I'd if a, yeah.
I 100% agree with you. I'm thinking more of the seasonal nature of the house and whether it needs to go to a Title V approved system, and because
you can have a campground.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just thinking about how many months a year is this house used, and that's a seasonal nature.
Well, then again, I don't know. I know that the applicant to date, it's not primary residence, he's using it as secondary residence, but again, it's not really, forgive me, the Conservation Commission's business or any element of what the use of the house is.
It is because we're trying to weigh and balance the pros and cons of allowing this to happen.
But now you're setting a limitation of use.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying limitation of use, but I'm wondering the impact.
Let's say it was
the
a full-time
impact that we're
residence.
getting with a cesspool right now, as opposed to
Right.
going to a complete Title V system.
Right.
Is the impact, I guess I'm trying to weigh both of those
Right.
systems.
So if you guys want to have a discussion
And
at
I
each
think
of the
that has
different
to- I think
interests
that
for
has to
wetlands
happen
protection.
in this, because of the nature of the construction of this, I just think that discussion has to happen. I'm sorry, but there's also, as one of the people speaking said, the precedent setting nature, we do have to be aware of that. We do have to, even though we look at each project individually,
Sure.
one of the members said, we still have to look at the cumulative impacts.
Right.
And the potential cumulative impacts down the road is one of the things I think about.
Yep, for other properties or, yep. Well, I don't think, we are one of the few properties out there that are saddled with this issue. The intermittent stream that we have runs onto the abutting property next to us and then discharges into Fort Pond. It doesn't run the course of any of the other properties out there. So each property is unique and individual in that context, that other people may have areas that don't have this situation.
I agree.
One of the first things when I saw this plan that concerned me was there was no breakout wall near the brook. That kind of bothered me right off quick. And now that they've put this retaining wall in to help and with that kind of made me more at ease with doing it, and you get any septic up and away from the lake. That was one of the other things that I thought was a better improvement. There again, I agree, it's a seasonal cottage. I mean, they're gonna be spending a lot of money just to put the septic system in.
Well, my question, what is a breakout wall? Or what is a breakout wall that you were talking about?
That cement wall you're putting in to keep it from
Retaining wall.
storage.
Oh, the retaining wall. Oh, right, yeah.
Guess I used the wrong terminology.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, the retaining wall.
Well, it seems like, to Carl's point, if the current wastewater approach, you can get a campground with an outhouse, and that's an okay thing to do. Not every lot is buildable. This certainly wouldn't be buildable under current regulations. I would like to see a wastewater peer review, honestly, of the system. Especially with respect to the shallow ledge. I think a lot is being put on us, frankly. With the reason the Board of Health, there's always this volley, right, between both boards. Because they're like, oh, well, we don't want to approve it until Conscom weighs in. And then, we want to know what the Board of Health says. And we've had, with my experiences with you, I believe you to be forthcoming.
Sure.
We've had plenty of applicants who have, represented, oh yeah, of course, Board of Health's fine. And then I'll go ask someone from the Board of Health and they're like, I don't know, what's this?
Right, yeah.
So I honestly am landing in, a wastewater peer review. It's kind of where I'm at. I recognize that wastewater needs to be addressed here. I'm not convinced that there isn't another alternative that is less impactful.
Right.
So that's where I'm at.
The one thing we can expand on too is protection of the interest for wetland protection. Whereas we're claiming that this has a marked improvement to water quality, which is the primary explicit intent of this. Whereas you're not comparing apples to apples when you're looking to, and I've looked at this for wetland mitigation on big projects, of what are you giving up in terms of wildlife habitat value, fisheries value, stormwater prevention,
I
stormwater
think
damage.
given you an appropriate amount of time, what does the board do on this or not do?
I think we should follow Julie's lead. I think we should follow Julie's suggestion.
Wastewater peer review.
And would that be different than what the Board of Health would end up doing?
The Board of Health review for Title V compliance, which
Right, yeah,
in single-family residence lot, I think is generally that's the review, is the Board of Health reviewing the Title V regulations.
so nobody
But
on
they're
the
not gonna
Board
look
of
at
Health,
alternatives.
yeah, nobody on the Board of Health is a hydrogeologist. I'm just thinking about, engineer, hydrogeologist, truly, because if we're installing the system, we are also looking at increasing the intensity of use at the site. So if we're increasing the intensity of use at the site, that's something that we also need to consider as well, because that follows the septic. And, whether someone wants to increase the intensity of use at their property, that's something that they can do, but that very much is within our purview if we're changing the intensity of use at the site. So I would feel a lot more comfortable if we had a wastewater peer review, breakthrough of the wall. If that were to happen, that concerns me. Like you've been threading the needle on this project for months.
Yep.
There's not a lot of room for error on this. And I just feel a lot more comfortable if we had a peer review for wastewater.
I'm not worried. I don't want to hemorrhage. Good. Sarah?
Is there someone in particular that you would encourage them to use? Is there someone that, let's give some guidance here.
So you want me to?
Of really
like,
what you, yep.
So a wastewater engineer.
Do you guys have, normally when things go to peer review, the Conservation Commission would give maybe a handful of qualified people, and then, Jacob, do you have any suggestions or recommendations?
That is correct.
A lot.
So if we're asking for a peer review, we should make sure that there are people that we value their opinion for. So as not to, Amy, do you have some?
Does Green do it? I don't.
We
think
don't run
Green
into
does
it because
I know we run into
go
stormwater mostly.
for other stuff, but they
Yeah.
probably work with somebody if they don't do it in-house. Green International, they do?
I don't
You
know.
know, I'm not, yeah.
No, GZA. does
I'm not
wastewater.
civil. Jacob is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we don't want to bias the study. I'm confident that any stormwater engineer or wastewater engineer in review of this will uphold our findings.
I guess
I don't know if
practical-
the board would like to hear more.
What did you say, Horsley and Witten?
Yeah, I don't know if they do wastewater review.
And perhaps Jim Gillespie can guide you.
Yeah.
Okay, can I ask, if this property, is this considered in failure? If this property sold, would they have to do something about this?
Yeah,
cottage or
Jacob,
house?
can he sell this property if it's in violation with Title V now? Or would he have to fix this prior to sale of the property?
He can sell it. It would have to be fixed prior to occupation. You'd have to have a Title V inspection report before you sold it, which it would fail.
All right, Chairman, we're gonna keep going.
Yeah, we gotta move.
Why don't, between us, come up with a few names? And then I assume they would go out and find someone to do the work. We need to come up with sort of a scope.
Okay,
I
I can help you with that.
Yeah. Or if you happen to have a scope that gives us something to work on.
Right.
And then we
Yeah.
can add.
Yeah, I mean,
add,
my
subtract to it.
concerns are the shallow ledge, which you've mentioned many times. So as we know, the groundwater seeps in, it finds the ledge, and then, seeps out. There are a lot of groundwater seeps in the area, follows
Yep.
the ledge. So that's my concern, especially with a really sensitive site like this.
Right. Jacob, do you have, in terms of scope, if we were to go to engineering peer review on the wastewater design and whether or not there are practical alternatives, I'm trying to figure out what we're aiming to get out of this. Specifically that, again, I think it would substantiate that we don't have a tight tank available to us, that a composting toilet will not significantly improve water quality. You still have gray water out there. It would be a review of our alternatives analysis and the
alternative
system
analysis,
design, right?
Yeah, I assume that the system design, the only thing they're going to judge the system design against are the Title V regulations, unless we stipulate them doing some sort of testing, in
Yeah.
which case, I mean, there's no question as to whether or not installing I think it's so I'm not sure what would be required to prove that beyond it being litigated in Title V.
Right, so I'm interested in the hydrogeology, not the Title V compliance, because Title
Right, so
V.
Title V has incorporated
But
uh,
Title
the
V
hydrogen-
doesn't have the site conditions of this site in particular.
Right, but what Title V stipulates is that after the effluent has percolated through 5 feet of the material into the groundwater table, it's been treated at that point. So whether or not it surfaces anywhere downstream from that, it's not really a concern.
I think to reconcile what is that there's a performance standard for Title V.
Sure.
That's well defined. Anything beyond that is sort of arbitrary in terms of looking at underlying geology or whether or
Title,
not there's a practical alternative on site.
okay, so Title V
I think that's
doesn't
a good-
require that it's 100% treated, so it can seep out into the environment and not be 100% treated, because Title V allows for that in many conditions. That's fine. I'm concerned, you're here because you
Yep.
are in the 50-foot buffer zone.
Sure.
That is why you have to be here. If Title V didn't care about wetlands, you could skip this piece.
Right.
So
But I
this is
don't
not
know,
because of
so
Title
the failing
V
to
that we're here.
understand, it's difficult to scope a peer review when it's not in accordance with the standard. That the standards have been met, and anything beyond that
So
is
wastewater seeping into the
It's
wetland
a-
areas.
right.
It's no longer considered wastewater once it's been treated to Title V standards. I think that's the
Okay,
the
so,
confusion here is that while it may seep out, it's not considered. I mean, I don't know what you mean by 100% treated, but it's not considered wastewater anymore at that point. It's treated to Title V state standards.
so like
So
no
any
nutrients,
additional treatment,
eutrophication.
like I don't know how we would specify it to be reviewed.
Okay, so,
Nitrogen loading, and you meet that requirement.
okay. I still think we need a peer review.
I agree with that. But I think that the peer review should be focused on standards rather than opinionated, nebulous areas that aren't in accordance with standards.
So
P-
site
Ps won't work
conditions,
that way.
existing site conditions. An engineer can look at existing site conditions,
Yep.
can look at Title V, can look at what the effluent is going to be.
Yep.
And provide an opinion on that.
Right.
I would
That's it.
suggest as well as the location.
At that point, we'd basically be asking a peer review engineer to design another septic system. If they've got to find another location and design an alternatives analysis that we've done. I think it would make sense to have the peer review engineer review and comment on our alternatives analysis, and also review and comment on our plans in lieu of Title V and state DEP regulations, as well as the Littleton Conservation Commission.
I think that approach grossly
Yes,
limits the
so I
scope.
agree that with Jacob, that we would follow that scope. Chairman, I think you need to keep going.
That's a mistake, just to be clear. I want to be on the record for that. You're limiting the scope of
We're
the
not-
location? Really? Over 6 acres?
Could you wait until you're recognized by the chair to make a comment?
Sure.
And I'll-
I think we need to bring this to a close.
Yeah, we
We've
need-
got other hearings to hear tonight. So let's just move on. You've had your say.
At 25 cents.
We're done.
$1.50.
Thank you. So the next notice of intent is 11 Scott
Oh, was
Road.
that was the close of the hearing? Oh, I
Yeah.
understand.
Don't
Thanks,
get
Dave.
comfortable.
No, I didn't know we were going to.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
For the 8:15 continued hearing.
So you'll follow up and see if we can come up with, somebody can do a peer review or something. the same?
Yeah, I'll work with Julie and Dave and we'll come up with a scope,
Okay.
Sounds good.
All
kind
right.
of based on the premise of what Jacob was saying.
Continued public hearing notice of intent, 11 Scott Road, U49 280, Mass DEP file number 204-924, paving a driveway. Somebody gonna speak to this?
I'll speak to it. I'm somewhat out of order with the commission. I just want to acknowledge that Jamie is waiting for information from me.
So just to be heard, none of us can hear you.
Yeah,
You need to be at the mic.
So you're really out of
Yeah.
order.
You're fine.
I'm doubly
It's
out
okay.
of order. Kyle Burchard from GPR. Information has not been in front of the commission, so I'm certain that we'll have to come back at the next hearing in order to wrap this up. But perhaps I can give an overview of where we are and what we understand about the site, where we're proposing to do work, and what some of our mitigation measures are, so that we can make progress. I'm not sure if this is the right spot, magic spot.
We're all learning.
Okay, yes, I agree.
And we'll forget it for the next time. So.
So everyone can see, I've done a little bit of coloring on this plan. This was originally filed as a notice of intent by the owners, Max and Cynthia. How are you? We're here. Yes. And so there was some question as they're out on the point at the very end of Scott Road as to where some of the resource areas are. Thank you, sir.
Oh, and just a point of order too, I don't think the Zoom people can see a plan.
Yeah.
That way we can see a plan.
Um,
You're gonna have to move it to the, is that the camera?
The camera's right there. I think.
There's one
Oh,
above you,
yeah,
too.
there's one right there.
Stop moving. All right, stay still. We're staying right here.
Stop moving.
He's saying stop moving. Yep.
Oh, they're gonna
Sorry,
find
trying
it.
to move the camera. To
I think
find
they're
it
gonna
for you.
find it. So I think Carl probably can't see
I
it.
can't see.
all right, all right. So-
Judy has to move it, sorry.
I'm here for comic relief after all that. Okay. Can you flip that camera? So, in short, here's Scott Road. We're at the very end of Scott Road on a kind of a promontory that has a perennial stream coming into Forge Pond, which is around the rest of the property. So we have a 50-foot buffer from the wetlands coming around this side, which meets the 50-foot offset from the bank of Forge Pond over to this side. That perennial stream creates a riverfront, which is on the property. I've only depicted the 100-foot inner riparian zone, and we are outside of that with all of what we're proposing to do. This property was developed prior to 1996. I think the house was built in 1978. So it's somewhat there by right. The 200-foot riverfront line is over here. It's about 35,000 square feet on the property. The work that's proposed is to pave about 3,500 square feet of existing compacted gravel driveway that's been there since the development was built. So what we're proposing to do is in doing that paving work is to collect it into a small structure, which ends up having a 4-foot sump by the time it would get to an overflow. Traps the water at that point. There is a recharge chamber that's proposed to take the water off of that. And so this is generally what we're proposing to do that, is compliant with the Wetlands Protection Act. Now, we are not controlling everything according to the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook in accordance with the Section 6 of the Littleton Wetland regulations. But what we've done is improve the situation quite a bit from having this water as a gravel driveway effectively all sheeting off into the buffers and the riverfront. There's a divide at this side of the driveway. Most of the driveway already goes this direction. All we're doing is capturing it, giving it a measured treatment that is really the maximum extent practicable for this particular small little driveway. So effectively, that's it. I owe you some details and information to that extent. We're outside the 50-foot. We're outside. We have a little touch of 100-foot that we're touching on this side from the pond side. But all of it's draining off in this direction, all being captured and treated.
What's the capacity of the collection chamber in terms of like a rain event?
Well, I mean, what we have configured is a system which captures it. It will hold water that will pond here during a particular event. There is an outlet that goes to a stone outfall. The capacity of that chamber is in conjunction with the pipe leading to it, and the part of the structure that will be in the sump is about 67 cubic feet.
Now, is the surface, sorry.
Go ahead.
Is the surface going to be bituminous pavement, or what are you planning to use as a material?
It's a bituminous pavement. Being in the riverfront, we do have an alternatives analysis that we'll provide to the commission to review for the next hearing. So there are many different ways that we could look at this, where it'd be, do nothing. There could be an alternative surface which is not bituminous and not stable, but would require additional maintenance, would result in further sedimentation that would run off into the buffers. We think it's ultimately best to bring in the bituminous pavement to be able to control that sedimentation. Seems to be the largest issue at this particular site. There could be, we do include the possibility of porous pavement. The grades aren't exactly supportive of that. It would be a much larger amount of work for the depth of the reservoir stone and filtration choker courses and so on that would have to be part of that porous pavement section. If it's not on a mostly level area, there's additional expense in trying to contain it with impermeable membranes that, water tends to find a way to sneak out and break out effectively from the porous pavement subbase. So that's, and again, that adds a lot of additional expense that it's not really germane to the idea of the project.
Will this have a grease and oil trap or anything?
Have a what?
Grease or oil trap type thing to just.
No, that's not proposed.
So for the treatment, are you referring to sedimentation then, basically?
For the most part, there is a measure of the tension that takes place, and we're talking about, a tenth and a half of CFS change up from pre to post that we are increasing. But we're stabilizing that outlet. It's not just finding its way and rutting down the hillside.
Mm-hmm. So Sarah and I had done a site walk many months ago. I would recommend a site walk. I think you really got to see, and I think you can just kind of drive down the road and turn around too.
Very end.
But I do think, some of what is existing there now, you described the gravel, kind of next to the house, and it's basically bituminous in the back of the house too. So it's, it's just kind of running off the retaining wall in the back. That being said, there's a pretty decent distance. It's not like it's, water falling into the lake or anything like that. But I think it's worth it for the commission to go see the site as you're developing your plans?
We ensure that at the corner of the house that you're talking about, where some could run the other way, that grade is adjusted, so we're
Yeah.
pushing it into this direction.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I picked up on that, but I've been there. It's just, it's unique. I don't know if it's on a moraine or something. It's just kind of up on this like knife sliver. It's an interesting spot. But I do think, some improvements to the current driveway are necessary. There's definitely runoff.
Please. Yeah, it'll stabilize that and control some of that sedimentation that occurs. I'm not sure how often you've got to bring in gravel in order to kind of stabilize it or bring it back up when it's eroded, but.
It takes one winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there has to be plowing.
Yeah.
Right.
And as soon as the plowing's done, it's all gone. As you know, because of global warming, we don't have stable frozen winters. We get mud. And that slush, it takes everything up, and then we have to completely redistribute again.
And all the gravel ends up in our front yard, in the grass.
It's fun. So do you, it sounds like, so you have more steps you need to take with your plan?
The plan we've got developed really more the documentation and updating the Form 3 and calculations and just showing, there's the site as it is, there's what we're proposing to do, there's some of the details that go along with the collection system, the treatment system. Just didn't come together for tonight. So
It happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we are making progress.
We are making progress.
Do you want to try to set up a sidewalk now or
Sure.
maybe next week or this week or?
What are the availabilities of the commissioners?
Do you have permission to go on site?
Absolutely. You been there before?
Yeah, I already went, so I don't need to go.
I've got some as well. We did a sidewalk
There was-
before you and
there were
Sarah.
two
right?
landowners
Oh, you did?
originally.
Yeah, because there's
Okay.
two
Yeah,
landowners.
Two separate
Oh, okay.
applications.
Right?
One
You've been
at
out there
9
before,
Scott
right?
Road
Yeah.
and one at
I don't
11,
Okay.
and I think the
Yeah.
9 Scott Road is going to withdraw.
Oh, sorry
It's
about
so
that.
long, I
Okay.
mean, yeah, I think
Never
a
mind.
second look would be good. I mean, I don't remember any details of the site at this
Well, that was
point.
last fall.
Yeah, it was a long
Yeah.
time.
It was freezing.
We're gonna try to set something up for next week, like,
Julie, it'll definitely be warmer when they go this time.
Yeah, the wind was whipping. Oh my gosh. That was so cool. That was really, I'm away next week, so I can't go, but
Later this week,
I've been.
Maybe Thursday this week?
there's no rain on
And as Julie
Thursday.
said, I've seen it, so I'm good.
Yeah,
the 24th?
I'm flying the 23rd, so I'm definitely out.
Rain tomorrow. Little rain.
I can do Thursday afternoon, 4, 5, whatever.
Would you like the engineer there to talk about them? Is that something that might be a viable
I think
thing?
you're probably helpful.
Available.
Okay.
Do we need to be there? Okay, I just don't know if we will. I don't want to stop you. I mean, I don't care when you come there. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm starting working at a hospital because I've got the new certifications. And whether I'll be available or not is unknown, but you are welcome on the property anytime. So.
So you think Kyle can be there at probably,
5 o'clock, is that the time or?
5 to 10-ish with that. All depends on 495.
Drive time.
At the mercy of it.
Drive
say
time.
5:15?
Thursday.
Yeah.
Ryan and Andrew, anybody else?
I might be able to.
We'll
I'll
be on
see- I'll
candid
see you,
camera if
Jason.
that helps. We can be there. And there's video surveillance on the premises.
You said this Thursday, right?
This Thursday.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
and Discussion of the Mary Shepherd proposed trail connection.
Sure, so I don't know, actually, you can pass these. There's enough for everybody, but, so I did just a kind of review of the history of what had happened. That the planning board issued the certificate of approval of a definitive subdivision and the special permit in 2000, which included the condition of granting the open space ultimately to the Conservation Commission. And in October of 2000, the Conservation Commission had asked that the area be donated to the town under your control to, quote, develop a management plan, maintain walking trails in their access areas, print trail maps, and in general become a steward of the donated land. And that the property gives the town the unique opportunity to have a loop nature trail and a residential subdivision coexisting along a major town road. The deed was issued in 2001, and the planning board again noted that the process, they worked diligently, this is a quote, with the neighbors and the developer to preserve this parcel for open space for the residents of Littleton. And it was accepted in 2001. In 2002, Art started walking it. And he actually did do a draft management plan, which I don't think actually, I have the draft plan, but I don't think it actually went anywhere. And he was very concerned about having basically the conservation land wrapped around all of the subdivision areas and the lawn clippings and the encroachments that might happen from then. But the draft management plan also said with the goals of reestablishing the former walking trails as much as possible for the town residents and developing the connector trails. The parking lot on Powers Road was begun in 2010. In 2015, DOT requested permission to use the parking lot for the staging area for their culvert work. And they basically occupied that area for like 3 years, making it very unattractive and not very well used. They finally left it in better shape than it was when they started anyway, but I think people just gotten used to not using it. So we got a swing sign up there in 2019, and the fields in the back had not been mowed in a while, so it was starting to get really brushy and out of control. So in 2018, we hired Sam Bell to go out there and mow it, and he'll be doing that again this year. For the main field, the trails themselves are being mowed by the land stewards when their equipment is working. So again, I think you've seen the current proposal is to do the loop trail. I've actually gotten several comments from several land stewards that, generally speaking, loop trails are certainly more desirable than walking in and walking back out again. People like to be able to do loops. The trail would add about 500 feet west of Mary Shepherd and about 600 feet east of the Mary Shepherd Road to complete the loop. It would parallel the existing stream at least 10 feet off the bank of the stream. No boardwalks or stream crossings required. No trees expected to be cut, but brush will certainly need to be cut down to allow the passage. No parking would be permitted. There's a kiosk plan for the parking lot over on Powers, but nothing at this area, just be the little, I think I've got a picture of some examples of some of the little trail signs that we have when the trail's going right next to someone's house. And that I would also recommend that certainly this area be marked as dogs must be leashed. So that's just kind of a summary of how this all came about, basically. And it was clearly meant for public open space and trails. And it was accepted.
A lot of research, Amy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It was interesting. I was impressed I could find it all, actually.
Yeah. That's a lot of meetings. And it seems pretty clear the intent was to develop trails there.
Where this red line goes through, that's definitely all conservation land. It is owned by the town.
Yeah, I actually DPR surveyed it, So we would know where it was. And it seemed when I was walking it that there was some encroachment, so we just got it, I just got that whole kind of area, surveyed the bounds, we did find some of the bounds when we were out there, but the ones we couldn't find, they reset them, so we knew what was going on.
That was a big deal about the bounds when they built that.
Yeah, there were a fair number in there. I think there's only a few that we couldn't actually find, and some of them were in a slightly different area than this.
I just remembered it was something I was very concerned about.
Well, thank God, because it's a really good idea. I never want another piece of property without the bounds marked on it.
But it appears that you're not infringing on anybody's private property. That's,
No, and certainly, and the abutters, I'm assuming will chime in, is that, the concern is that it is close, especially to one house, as the trail goes by, which certainly happens in several other areas in town, but that's, I believe, the primary concern.
is it possible to center the trail kind of in between? I guess what I'm looking at is this here. Would it be possible to kind of center it?
Yeah, and actual center line hasn't been set up yet. Waiting just to make sure that the concept gets approved, if you will. But I would see it being pushed away from the house as much as possible without getting into the wetland, the stream. It's actually the west side of Mary Shepherd Road. That's actually was supposed, well, I guess it is a detention basin, a really shallow one. So it's probably a good thing to mow it. So.
Anybody got any questions or comments or? Anybody in the audience got anything they want to say?
No, I'd love to see it happen.
We have
we're
any
gonna-
of the abutters that are?
Yeah, we've got a hand up.
Yep, the Hornbecks have their hand up. I'm not sure if that's.
Yeah, so this is Trish Hornbeck, Paul Hornbeck, 9 Mary Shepherd Road. We are the property that you're referring to that will be impacted the most. So basically, any concerns that we've raised for the past several months seem to be of no concern to the commission. Can you confirm that that's the case?
No, I would disagree with that. I feel like we've listened to your concerns and we're hearing them. I don't know.
Well, the privacy issue hasn't been addressed, the security issue hasn't been addressed, the protection of our property hasn't been addressed. The reason for looping this trail through a private neighborhood has not been addressed. We haven't had answers to any of our questions or concerns.
I think Amy outlined it to start.
Yeah, I mean, the reason it's that whole conservation property was established and set up so there would be trails through there, and in particular, a nature loop trail. Yes, it took a long time for it to go in. And the commission certainly wants to hear abutter concerns. But there's, excuse me, a lot of trails that go close to people's homes. And as I think one of the commissioners had mentioned before, this is public open land that the taxpayers should be able to, the commission should be able to enjoy.
And I think on our walk, we pointed out how close the trail is to that abutter off of Snow Drive. Basically runs right adjacent to his house.
Right.
Yeah.
But it allows people access to that trail. So just it's the configuration of it's what we're dealing with. Unfortunately, this town, everything's very tight between development and conservation land. We do the best we can, but we are what our concern is to have as much land open to the public as we possibly can.
And it is town property.
And it's town property. Now, there are ways we can handle privacy. We can potentially, I don't think we've got that far yet. We can, there's plantings that can happen. There's a lot of ways we can do that. We can certainly keep the trail as far away from the property line as possible. But where we can, we could certainly entertain some plantings that would isolate your property from the trail.
And this was all more or less guaranteed way back when they made the subdivision.
There's another hand up. Lexi Yang has a hand up.
Yeah, this is Larry Yang from 7 Mary Shepherd. In the previous meeting, there were certainly discussions around, how much time has passed and questions around the demand of the trail. Certainly, I understand what we found is what was originally the intent. But I guess my question to the commission board here is, your goal wanting to provide as much land to the taxpayers to do trails as much as possible. But to that end, I guess my question is the town asking for that as taxpayers? Because we as a subset of those taxpayers are saying that we're asking for what the drive is, and there's a can versus should question that I think needs to be looked into. Because it sounds like from what I'm hearing in the discussions here, it's more we have the legal right, so therefore we're going to do it.
No, I don't think that's the point. The point was that
my statement.
The point was that this plan was set up. The point that was made was that when the applicant originally came in here to develop that property, it was with the one of the reasons we even allowed it to happen was because of this donation of conservation land to the town, which was given to us with the intention of opening it up to the public. So before any houses were even built on that land, it was the intention of the town to put a trail on that land. That's what Amy was, after all her research, that's what she was telling us. So it's a different story when all of a sudden you see all the houses there and it becomes, this fully developed subdivision, as opposed to when we looked at it, there was nothing there. And when we accepted it, that we knew what was going to be developed, obviously, because we saw the plan. But the way we looked at it at that time was we were going to have a trail open to the public.
Right, and I can appreciate that, and I think that's what we had talked about when we were talking about some of these new developments that are being done currently, and making sure that those agreements are in place. But in our particular case, as you're helping to illustrate, this wasn't. It was planned when there wasn't a development. Now this development is here and established 20 years later. We're invoking wanting to create it, and I don't know if we're fully getting the assessment of the impact and assessing the impact to the community here.
Kind of cast in stone.
Yeah.
Basically. Unfortunately.
Yeah, right. I mean, a comment like that makes it sound like it's really, it's set in stone because that's what was legally written. But again, that's what I'm coming back and asking the commission for is, I understand what was done, but it does seem like the situation's a little bit different 20 years later.
And I don't necessarily think it's any different. We knew it was going to be developed there. We saw it. We approved the subdivision. So we knew where each house was going. We knew the bounds of the property, and we knew the bounds.
You didn't know until you did the research just until now. That's what I'm saying is you're kind of picking this back up.
Unfortunately, we bought into it unknowingly.
So I think part of what the history shows is, a planning process that often takes place for our conservation lands. There often is not resources or funding right away to do a trail. Our trail maintenance is through stewards and volunteers, with the Littleton Conservation Trust, with support of the Conservation Commission. So that planning process can take a while based on resources. And then as Amy enumerated in her, with her research, without, we didn't install a trail until, didn't look to install a trail until there was a parking lot. And so the impact of people parking in the cul-de-sac was avoided. And then the parking lot was taken over by DOT for a number of years. So I honestly, in my view, I don't feel like the time that's elapsed is unreasonable, based on just kind of the slow pace sometimes that establishing trails takes. I think I did say, and I, still will look to work in the future to, when we accept an open space donation from a developer, to look at some of these things more closely, and a recent example is Durkee Farm. There's someone with a trail directly next to their house. So I think as a town, it would be good to, kind of look at these things. But I think it was Anna pointed out too, that, folks who have ended up with trails in their backyards, like the rail trails, it's actually improved their property. And so I think having something like a trail versus, a wastewater treatment plant for an industrial use, I understand it's scary when things happen next to your house, but in my view, a trail, isn't a detriment. Conservation land and a trail is a benefit. And it clearly was the intent when the property was purchased. It says the neighbors, the planning board worked diligently with the neighbors and the developer. It looks like it was in 2001. But I understand the plight, but I don't think it's appropriate for this commission to, not move forward with the intent of the property. And based on what I enumerated, I do think the timeline is reasonable, based on the volunteer labor, small municipal budgets. These things take time. So that's where I'm at on it.
Out of curiosity, were you the original owner?
Who's that question directed towards, sir?
Are you the original owner?
No, I purchased 6 years ago and had no idea that this trail was going in.
And we are the original owner of ours, but we were not aware of it either.
Never informed of a trail. And in 20 years have not heard anything about a trail until 2021.
Didn't go there.
This is
I think we have a.
from 17 Mary Shepherd Road. May I speak?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
So, Chairman, Andrea Trimmer has hand up online.
Yeah, so this is Philip Goddard. This is Andrea Trimmer's husband. I live at 17 Mary Shepherd Road. I am one of the original owners, and I am aware of the trail behind my house that goes through the field and connects up with Powers Road. I am unaware that there was some clause in the development that said there was an opportunity to put in a loop. Never have I heard of such a thing. Now, with respect to what I believe the last lady that spoke said, please don't compare this to a rail trail. This is not the same at all. Please do not compare this to Durkee Road. This is not the same at all. I mean, there were other people that spoke at the last meeting that commented about potentially some of the impact to wildlife. There is wildlife there. You are next to a stream. There doesn't seem to be a great amount of concern being expressed for any of this, apart from the fact we found some wording from a 20-year-old document that says the word loop. We can put in a loop. And there's an opinion been expressed that loop trails are more attractive than straight line trails. I don't quite comprehend that, but again, we're debating an opinion here. And to what the other fellows on the street said, yeah, this is 20 years ago that all this stuff was put together. The situation here has changed. And I cannot believe the addition of this amount of trail is going to make the world a difference to the taxpayers of Littleton.
I have one additional thought. This is Andrea Trimmer, also at 17 Mary Shepherd. 2 weeks ago, there was concern that the trail was running parallel to the stream. I just wanted to have somebody follow up on that.
Right, so I expressed concern about it. I walked the property based on the intermittent nature of where we were walking and the short segment. And actually, when I walked it as well, we felt that it would likely be a neighborhood trail rather than having droves of people drive in to park at Powers Road and do a short trail. So based on walking it, I didn't have concerns about people walking next to it.
And I would also say on Conservation Commission property, the Conservation Commission has the right to do things to improve the property, such as putting in a parking lot, doing forest management, tree cutting, putting in trails, building a nature center. I mean, it's just because it's conservation land doesn't mean it's never going to be touched. That's sort of as of right, if you will. And I think someone else had a hand up. Oh, Trish again, or maybe.
Yes.
Hornbeck.
Trish Hornbeck again. 2 questions, please. When the subsequent site walk to the last meeting happened, at any point was anybody on our driveway?
No.
No.
Because that's
we pushed back through poison ivy.
Accessing, getting close to the stream right now is incredible overgrowth, poison ivy. So if you're viewing it from the driveway, you're not getting the same impact as walking it. That was the first question. The second question is, if you noted that you intend for it to be a neighborhood trail, can the neighborhood vote on this?
Well, you're having a say in the meeting.
I don't think you're, I mean, when she said neighborhood trail, well, I'll let Julie clarify it, but I think that was just, to me, it was
like a nice
figure of
place.
speech.
So I have a sidewalk in my front yard. I lost 10 feet of my front yard to a sidewalk, and I was like, holy cow, people are going to be walking 22 feet from my front door now instead of 35 feet. And I was really worried. And now I love it because sidewalks are good for your neighborhood, but it brings a heck of a lot more people to my front yard. So I do get the concern, but I've also been in the position to say, like, why do I need all these people this close to my house? So that's kind of what I meant from a neighborhood trail. You will get your neighbors more so than anybody else.
And that includes the snow terrace.
The snow, yeah.
It's not just,
Yeah.
Right. That's what I meant by that. And I appreciate if you have a difference of opinion of having, your neighbors walk near your house, we can agree to disagree on that. But that's what I meant by that. I don't envision droves of people like they do at Oak Hill, for example, or like Cloverdale, some of our more popular trails. There's just not adequate parking. So that's what I meant by that. It'll be the Snow Drive people, it'll be the Mary Shepherd people, and perhaps, people on Powers Road. I can't imagine it's going to be droves of people.
It is already different people that we don't recognize from this neighborhood or Snow Drive that are already walking on our lawn to access these trails. So I respectfully disagree. It's going to be.
So there's a spot that we need to block off. Yeah, I did see that. There's a major problem area where it dumps right into somebody's yard. And so that's a problem that needs to be fixed, right, ASAP.
So you have 2 more hands raised, Moran's and Lexi Young.
Well,
Would the Marines like to go
and
first?
Lexi Yang. Morans haven't spoken yet. You want to take Morans?
yeah, sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
You're on mute if you're speaking.
Yep.
You gonna speak?
Well, maybe they're having trouble
Go to
unmuting.
Lexi.
I can lower the Moran's hand, they can put it back up if they want to speak.
Let's move on to the Yanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to add a comment that if the primary focus or the primary group audience to use this trail is a group within Powers Road, Mary Shepherd, and Snow, I think it's been fairly well outspoken where Mary Shepherd stands. I'd be happy to go knock on doors on Snow to find out if everyone's for or against something like this. Is that something the conservation would be interested in getting a poll for?
No, so
I actually live in the Snow Village neighborhood, and people walk that trail from the access point off of Snow Drive. Not a lot, but people do walk that trail.
yeah, and I mean, not this, that was Julie's opinion. I tend to disagree with that. I think she mentioned Cloverdale and other short loops like that are very busy, and I think the town is looking for another loop like this where they can get away from the crowd and the congestion at Cloverdale or Oak Hill.
May I ask, sir, where that opinion is from? Is that a demand that you've heard anecdotally, or is that something that?
Yes, it's my opinion, and from other folks that I know in town. Yes, I hike the trails in town. They're very busy right now. I've only been in town for 6 years, but the past 2 years are the busiest trail I've ever seen our trails. People are using all of the trails in town, and like Amy said, it appears that people like the loops where you go around instead of out and back. I personally agree. I do prefer loop rather than out and back. But I just think that the demand for trails is high in town.
And certainly after COVID, when people were exploring more of the trails and doing.
And I guess there's a
The trust
just to clarify,
20
when
and
you say that
20, there was a lot of interest in people finding new places to go besides
absolutely
the normals.
And do we anticipate that demand to continue with the pandemic coming or squaring away?
I hope so. I certainly hope so.
I think people have found the outdoors.
People get back to work.
I work for the National Wildlife Refuge System, and all our national wildlife refuges across the country have experienced just crazy visitation. The national parks, the trails are being overused. There's so many people. So basically, people have found the outdoors as a result of the pandemic. I don't think it's going to go away anytime too soon.
And I imagine we would want to encourage people to go outside and
That's what I mean,
explore
yeah.
the different
I hope
environments
it's-
of Littleton.
You ask any outfitting store, they don't have any merchandise available. People bought everything, hiking shoes.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned with the merchandising component of this.
I'm not getting that. I'm just telling you, we're trying to answer your question that, yes, there's been a huge increase in visitation, and I don't think any of us probably anticipated going down.
And I think the Morans are back and ready to have a comment. Are the Morans able to unmute
Are you able to
themselves?
unmute? Maybe you're double muted. Is that possible? We're having a hard time hearing you. Or actually, we can't hear you at all.
I saw the mute button flicker. Are you able to unmute them, Amy?
Oh, or maybe hit the space
No,
bar.
that's Judy's doing that, but
Hit and hold down the space bar and see if you can talk.
God is doing that, so say you. No, it's Judy.
Oh, I thought you were doing that.
Judy can't.
You can't. Okay. Sounds like Judy can't.
They must be a problem at the other end.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is if you hit the space bar on your computer and try to talk, that might work.
I run over 20 neighbors' houses.
We don't know where they
It's
are.
possible to call in.
Yeah.
How much of the traffic out of Snow Village is probably just Snow Village people? if you.
Oh, it's all Snow Village people.
There's no parking.
There's no
There's no
parking, so
parking,
you have to walk. It might be potentially people from Pickard Lane across the way, because they walk over to Snow Village and we vice versa walk on their side.
That makes sense.
Do you end up with a school, any of those?
Montessori school?
Yeah,
No.
no.
Hi, are we able
There
to speak now?
you go.
Oh, yep.
I said,
All right, we
they,
can
they
hear
left,
you.
they left and came back in.
We can hear
Yeah,
you.
that's so sorry about that. This is Allison and Eamon Moran at 15 Mary Shepherd Road, and we echo all of the comments of our neighbors. And, you know, one thing that I think everything's been touched upon other than the safety. And you had mentioned that, you know, people want trails with less people and all the trails are so crowded. Well, most of us moved into this neighborhood because of exactly that it was less crowded and it was a private street. There are young children that use that cul-de-sac to ride bikes and scooters, and no amount of parking in the area or no parking signs is going to keep people out of that loop. And it's just it seems like a double-edged sword. You're either saying, well, but that would be okay because there's not going to be a lot of usage. It'll just be your neighbors. Well, if that was the case, we're saying that the neighbors in our community don't want it. And yes, we would need to check in with Snow Drive and all of that. So it's kind of, you know, which argument is it? Is it going to be droves of people from the community and therefore safety is a huge concern? Or you're convinced that it's just going to be the neighbors, of which we're saying we don't think that drive and that need and that desire is there. And, you know, thinking about verbiage, Amy had said something about when she was reading the intent about to the extent possible. You know, I think that the concerns brought up by all the neighbors kind of puts into question is, well, what is that extent? Has that extent happened? Is the intent fulfilled by the trails that are already there and in use?
So I don't think so, because the people who manage and build our trails, you know, have a pretty strong opinion that the loop is desirable, and that's, you know, again, what the intent was, you know, from the area. But a lot of thought goes into trails and trail development and stewardship of our conservation lands and of our trails. And, you know, so I don't know if that answers your question or not. And I mean, honestly, all this talk about the usage and the pandemic and then our opinions on what's going to happen, that's speculation, honestly. I'm not really sure that matters all that much. I hear you on the concern about safety. You know, I don't think we have a very good track record of safety on our trails.
That's what I was going to ask, if there's.
I have not heard of any instances of issues on our trails. We have other trails that go very close to houses. You know, and again, I certainly understand the concern. But there are a lot of residences in town that are adjacent to areas where the public can access. You know, so I don't know if that helps answer those questions.
And there's certainly also trails in town that don't have parking.
Right.
They're
yeah,
access
that's
from
true.
either
Are there any trails
from a
that-
parking lot or from the neighborhoods.
Are there any trails that cross directly across a roadway or a cul-de-sac or a residential, the street itself?
Yeah, I think we've looked at connections that go across streets and interconnections.
Yeah, certainly the town forest and Browns.
Let's say
Yeah.
Brown
Wood.
Forest, right?
Yeah.
And the Two Brothers Trail does
The
cross
Two
over.
Yeah, Two
Yeah,
Brothers
all-
goes across
all
from the
sorts of-
church, yeah.
And they're going right up someone's lawn, basically.
Yeah, there's also that
Town property, but
street near Shaker Lane.
Oh yeah, Middlesex.
Yeah, the path that goes right between houses there, and to access the path.
You can have to Shaker Lane
Right.
from,
Yeah.
or vice versa.
And the new trail over at Williams goes right up the person's side yard.
So yes, there is trails that go by very close to
Crossroads.
people's property lines in town.
And I would echo Julie too, that I've never heard of any safety concerns from people walking the trails.
And I can't either. I don't think I've ever heard of any issues with safety out on our town properties. So.
So do we need to bring this to a close or?
We have another hand raised.
I think.
Yes, Trish Morgan. Are there any other current trails that go by a registered sex offender's home?
I don't think we have that data. Are you? Not sure we want to go there.
Not sure if it's appropriate comment.
No.
Yeah, you can't really control it.
Well,
We don't have that data.
Shouldn't the public be aware of that if that's an impact to Mary Shepherd?
What?
I'm
not following.
And wouldn't the commission research that as part of the proposal? Is that going to be public knowledge that that trail goes right along the property?
So I believe the sex offender registry is public, and anybody who wants that type of information can just go in a database and search it. And then.
No, I'm referencing we are aware of that because there is one on Mary Shepherd. Is the commission aware of that?
We are now.
And would that be public knowledge to anyone using the trail?
We're not going to put up a sign.
No, to the extent that they could look it
I
up
don't
in the.
think that's
in
our
the database.
jurisdiction.
Yeah, I think that's way outside of our purview.
That's, I'm concerned that this conversation.
Well, I'm referencing it because that should be
inappropriate
as well. So anyways, let me just close by saying I remain adamantly opposed to this, and I'm very disappointed that this has been the process. It sounds like this is going to go ahead regardless of what the residents think. This is our first experience with an issue in the town, and extremely disappointed in the process.
So I would like to point out that, we've had multiple hearings, multiple conversations. We've gone out to the site multiple times. So from a process standpoint, what I'm struggling to envision, other than agreeing with your point of view, I'm struggling to understand what else process-wise there's a gap. I think we've done more than our due diligence here. Amy looked through, lots of files to determine the history. I think we've gone well over our 15-minute hearing, to have conversations and to hear concerns, and to relook at things. And yes, we're landing, I think landing somewhere that you're not happy with, but I don't understand the process piece.
Because despite raising multiple concerns, all we've heard was that you intended to do this for 20 years, so you're going to do it, regardless of what the current residents think.
It's been a
To be
concern.
clear, I mean,
You mentioned that this was something that was done 20 years ago, and yet we've only recently heard about it, and we've also been told that, oh, this will take a while. I have never seen something go through so fast and with such vigor that we can't wait to get it done. And it seems that, again, the residents that live here that have to deal with it are totally ignored. And it's very blatant on the commission's part.
To be clear, I just wanted to say that the commission is not
putting this trail in your lap and then completely walking away. You know, we are more than willing to work with property owners in this area to try to ensure that, you know, the trail has minimal impact to your privacy in your homes by way of property markers, trail markers, what have you. And, you know, the conversations can continue, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, even if the trail does itself move forward.
And I mean, it hasn't been a quick process, as you mentioned. It hasn't happened all at once. It's actually taken 20 years to get to this point.
But the notification for us, it has. As many residents on this call have indicated, we've not heard about this until recently. So yeah,
we can't, when there's a trail concept and we have no idea if it's going forward or not, we can't start notifying people
right
before it gets a little further. And once we actually did think it was worth going ahead with a survey, you all got notified that the survey was happening and that there would be a trail and that there'd be meetings on it.
That is not the case.
That is not accurate.
No,
We saw surveyors on our street and asked and only found out through inquiries that this was what was occurring. There was never a formal notification to anybody in the neighborhood about this.
Would agree.
There were letters sent out.
No, that is not true.
No letter.
I can go back to the files.
Yes, please do.
How did you send them, Amy? Did you send them certified or just a letter?
I can't right now if they're certified or not. And then also had discussions when I was trying to check the encroachments that have been going on.
Yeah, where does that stand? What?
Nothing has happened yet.
We haven't got there yet.
Well, I mean, that has to take place.
No, it
That
does.
conversation has to
With the brush cutting that went on, I went out, it's probably around this time last year, when I got to play about the brush cutting, and I agreed that at that point, the brush cutting, there's no fill or anything. We'd give it a year, see if the vegetation came back, and then decide if any remediation need to be done from that. After the survey, we realized that, you know, there's so much of the lawn back there. And that has not been dealt with at all. There's the person who lives on Great Road who's been going through there, and I talked to him. I owe him a follow up, decide what to do with that. And then there's a person, maybe 11, 13, I can't remember where it was, that had all the trees and the wood stacked up in the wetlands, and they're moving it off. And I have not gone back to check if that wood's been moved.
Okay.
So that's all kind of in process, and none of it's been resolved.
So the formal deal with us doing the survey was to check out who owned where and who was doing what they should or shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in going ahead with a trail if there's no room for a trail.
Right.
That makes sense.
So where do we stand? Do we just?
No, you get to say for the last time, what's your pleasure?
Yeah.
So do you want to move ahead with the trail pieces of this? We can lay out a center line, go back in and mow it again.
That seems like.
Not follow up, your choice.
It seems like that would be a good thing and see what gels.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it makes sense to, you know, mow or, you know, look at what the least impactful distance would be. And, you know, I mean, that down the side of that one driveway where I guess the trees had been cleared, it's like full of invasives now. So it seems like.
I don't think they cleared any trees, maybe one. It was just like brush
okay.
stuff.
Well, it's like all bittersweet.
Yeah, it's all
now,
invasive.
which is really bad. So maybe it makes sense to kind of do a mock-up and look at it, see how that shakes out. And then I really think we do need to block, we need to block that ASAP. That's a problem. We don't, I don't know how that, I don't know if like the
That's
people.
within our purview to block that. It's on our land.
It's on our land.
It's on our land.
I think it was an old cart path
We
that
should
got
do
cut
that.
off.
Oh, okay.
I think
I
it
was wondering how it got there.
I think it predated everything.
Okay,
It just
I say it seems odd that someone would like make that off of their own house.
That's a pretty big trail.
Yeah, so I would say we want to block that ASAP.
Would it
And,
help to have some sort of signage trail here or something for a little bit until it gets fully, especially where it's controversial?
Well, I think right now, as you come in from Snow, on the left side is to say, no trail, basically, at this point. And then everyone would have to turn right and go along the Esker, or whatever it is, and out to the field that way.
That's what everybody's doing right now.
Except for some people are kind of going straight for the
right, they're going
people's yards. Not kind of straight, but.
But yeah, you obviously need a sign at that junction where the Esker goes and the
Right,
other
yeah.
trail go the other way. You're gonna have to sign, you're gonna have. I mean,
Pull brush across.
yeah, like Whitetail has some of that.
Yeah, I mean,
I was
it's a
like
serious.
Whitetail has
it's
some of the
yeah.
trespassing signs
Yeah.
there, end of trail, private
Yeah.
property.
And I also think along, if we do get close to one of the budding neighbors, we just put some plant. I think we need to look at how we can shelter it a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the back of this, that's what would be there. I mean, I think that was full of mature trees at one point based on what was out there.
Yeah, on our property. Yeah.
Right, but if someone cut trees on our property, that's, I don't know, I mean, we don't have a lot of money.
Oh, I'm not saying we should have to put it back. I'm saying that, but I'm saying that there should be trees there and there wouldn't be a line of sight into their house or their backyard in that spot.
Right.
It seems to me that we had someone that was going to give us some money towards putting some trees out at some point from the Amazon group.
Sorry, we're having, at least I am having trouble hearing you, Jim. Do you have a mic that's close? Maybe you should move the mic closer to your mouth or your.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It seems to me there was somebody that was willing to give us some money towards some trees or something.
That was for the Browns property purchase.
Okay.
That was a targeted donation.
Yeah, okay. Is there a chance that we could fund a few hemlocks or something to put along the screening or something of these trees? I don't know, I just try to.
I know,
keep this-
and I agree, it's certainly, it's near these folks' houses, but we have a lot of trails near people's houses.
Yeah,
And if they start asking for trees,
yeah. I don't know, just food for thought, trying
and I don't think that the trees that the water department
The shade
takes
trees.
away, they have to be near the house, they can't be up in the.
Yeah, it's a shade tree.
You're not gonna-
The
yeah.
intent is a shade tree to shade the house.
Yeah.
To save energy. Or maybe the shade tree committee, although.
I guess.
Yes, public,
Shade.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, folks, where do we move from here? Just go forward?
Well, it sounds like maybe stake and mow a center line, so we can walk it better. Jim already mowed it once, but it took so long for us to get out there, it's impassable again.
Sure.
Especially on the west side.
Yeah, the poison ivies.
And block off that dead end trail somehow.
Just try to stay as close to the center line of something when it's real close to a homeowners for the time being. But if we don't have too wide a path, maybe that'll get people.
Well,
to
given, especially where you're gonna need to mow it, it is so brushy.
Yeah.
That you're gonna need a decent trail, otherwise you're just gonna be crawling through shrubs in no time.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to talk about tonight?
I think that was everything.
Could I just go back to one meeting we had with the selectmen? It seems like there was a whole lot of things that came up on the table that we hadn't thought about. might be worth getting explored. I mean, it's large, much larger parcels.
Availability is availability.
That's the thing. It's so reactionary when it comes to land
It's so
purchases.
reactionary.
And in the past, especially when we put together the last open space and recreation plan, we had batted around the idea of creating like a master list of parcels. And in thinking of doing that, we ran into a couple different kind of obstacles. One was strategically, if you tell somebody that the town is looking to buy your property, the prices are going to go up. And then the other factor was that a lot of people didn't want their property listed on some list of spaces that the town wanted to purchase. So it's a tough balance. But what we wound up doing was putting together almost like a qualifications chart for preferred land or priority land for the town to purchase. So if the land possessed certain qualities, it would get a higher rating in terms of the town wanting to purchase it. And that's really the only thing that you can do because of the reactionary nature.
But it's hard because you're not comparing two properties. You're comparing the one that's available right now.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
120 days.
So it's a tough balance, but you really can't get out in front of it.
I was just kind of surprised that Sanderson was even thinking about some other rest of it, or more of it. That kind of took me back.
TDR.
Just, why just put the little tidbit out?
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
Well, I think Don had mentioned a CR, right? I don't know if it was in exchange for building on another area of that property.
Yeah, he was talking about
CR
building
or
rights or something. I wasn't.
Transfer of development, right? I thought it was TDR.
Oh, that could be
transfer of
too. Yeah, I
development
wasn't sure what was.
Yeah, he definitely said transfer development.
Do you guys know about the Sanderson property or what conversations may have been? Yeah.
I think Don knew.
Yeah.
Do you guys, does LCT keep that like qualifications list somewhere?
I think I had emailed it around to Dawn and a few other people a few times, and we were working to get something finalized to have like an official like qualifications chart. But I'll have to dig that out. Maybe we can.
Yeah, I'd be
officiate it
interested
at some point.
It's really hard. Sometimes like a really small property is really important. And so it's,
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think, as we grow and have more stressors on our water and our water quality, I just feel like zone 2s are kind of a no-brainer.
I would suspect that some of that Sanderson property is sitting on the aquifer.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It's in the zone. It's in the zone 2.
Is
I
sitting
mapped
on the
zone
aquifer.
Probably all of those properties are.
Yeah.
No, I mapped the zone 2 today, and that property wasn't even like halfway to the boundary of the radius.
Yeah, so
of the
all of
zone
them,
2.
then, that whole strip of
That
land,
whole like neighborhood and developed area. So it'd be my 2 cents. Like it's a good place to start.
I can't say I'd want to pass up on that 61A part, but if there's a chance of getting a larger protection there.
Well, he also didn't.
If it's not available. And TDR is supposed to be less expensive too.
yeah, as hard as land prices go up, it gets a lot harder to buy something.
Yeah.
We got to wait here what board's looking to say too. They were going to look into their budget constraints first. It's not, they pushed it on us.
Well, I guess I'm supposed to call for maybe if anybody would like to adjourn this meeting. If we're all done kicking stuff around.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, tell me what you're doing still here.
Oh, it's Dave Cowell. Before you adjourn, and I regret you guys have heard enough of me tonight. I believe I left my wallet in the conference room.
Oh my gosh.
If you guys would like, I think I left my wallet on.
Yes.
Oh my
gosh.
Is it there?
Yeah, we got it.
Oh, thank glory be.
Oh my gosh.
I'll take it up to the office.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, I actually have a trip to Carlisle tomorrow. I don't know if you're around. I could stop by Littleton if you're there.
I probably won't be in until close to 9. I have an 8:30.
No
cycle.
worries. It'll be a midday trip. I'll coordinate with you later, but I
my
feel
gosh.
very relieved that my wallet is.
I know you I was still here.
Do we have to
Now
review
you
this?
can, now you can see it tonight, Dave.
I know.
Yeah.
What a way to track
Yeah.
your wallet down. That's so funny.
Is this gonna show?
All right. You guys are the best.
Yeah.
Amy, I'll follow up with you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dave.
Good night.
Jim, congrats again. Be well. I'll see you guys.
Good night, Dave.
Good night, Dave.
Take care.
Somebody,
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I love that. That's the best part of this meeting in person.
Terms are completed.